You know what's scary? It's not sadness. Sadness still is heavy, but it has shape, it has a sense of clarity. What's scary is chaos. This is the state when you're trying to think, when you're trying to work, when you're trying to create something, and your brain is technically on, but it's not actually working. I used to blame myself for it. Like, I used to think I'm being too weak, or I'm not disciplined enough, or I'm just wasting my time. And that's the thing which prompted me to start looking for some answers and understand it better so that I can function a bit better. And that's when I read this research paper about emotions, and it hit me with this sentence: emotions are where your mind and your body interact closely and most mysteriously as well. And that's when I realized something which changed the overall tone of the self hatred I had for myself. Maybe I'm not broken. Maybe my functional system is just out of sync. So today I thought maybe I could talk to you in a very casual way, and I'm trying to explain what I understood from this paper, like how emotions tend to mess up our thinking, why the heart keeps talking in the emotional language, and why controlling your thoughts is not always equivalent to controlling your feelings. Most of us grow with this story. Like, there is a brain which has the function of logic, intelligence, and decision making, and then there is also the heart, which brings in the feelings, the weakness, the drama. It's almost like there are these two enemies existing in the same body. Even the philosophers did think about it that way. Plato literally described emotions as these wild running horses, something which need to be reined, something which need to be controlled by the construct of the intellect. Honestly, I get why people believe that, why I believe that as well. Because it's like when your emotions get too intense, it can feel like your thinking is getting hijacked or your thinking is just getting compromised. But this paper points out something very interesting. I think it's little more accurate and honestly a little more forgiving on your emotions. It indicates that the cognition and your emotions are not necessarily enemies. They are not necessarily supposed to stand in front of each other and contrast each other. They are essentially different systems which are wired to interact with each other. And this particular interaction is not optional. It just is there, and it is what makes you functional. A lot of emotional regulation advises that emotions follow thoughts. When you change your thoughts, you change your emotions. But neuroscience over the last decade or so has made something very clear. It has made it clear that emotional processes often happen and function a lot quicker and faster than your thoughts. That is, emotions are a lot faster than your thoughts. That is, emotions come to you a lot faster than your thoughts. And they have the power to bypass this linear mind processing entirely. So it's not always like your thoughts are going to lead you to your feelings. Sometimes, more than often, it's your feelings which are leading you to your thoughts. Or even it could take certain steps in between, like your feelings are going to lead you to a certain level of bias to yourself. It is going to lead you to a certain level of thoughts, and that is going to lead you to a certain level of justification which you are going to give to yourself. And when you get to that point of justification, you kind of stop thinking, why can't I just think my way out of this? Because it's like you're trying to solve a problem with a very different tool, with a tool which is not useful in this case. And that's where the structure of brain comes in. This paper talks about the concepts of brain like the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, which share a two-way communication. So emotions can manipulate or modulate a thought, and thinking in turn can also modulate emotional processing. The connections going from the emotional center of yours to the cognitive centers are often more than other way around, and emotional centers tend to affect your cognitive center. Like, it's a two-way cycle which is happening without you even realizing it. And this is something which explains why you can know for absolute certainty and it still feels opposite to your emotional center. It still feels opposite to your body. And there is a particular part from this paper which kind of blew my mind away. This paper mentions a bit about the research which was done on people who had a certain level of damage in their prefrontal cortex. This is the area which integrates the cognitive understanding and the emotional process of it. While these people could score well on the intellectual tests, all while their intelligence looked intact, but their day-to-day lives, their decision making, their relationships, their sense of priorities, they were all over the place. They were struggling very badly with that. And that suggests something so counterintuitive about this. Emotions are not the enemy of rationality. Emotions are the component of rationality. The emotional input we give to our intellect and the decision making process, they are kind of indispensable for rational thinking. When you're heartbroken, you might actually understand this, you might relate to this, because heartbreak is a crisis of your emotions, and that is not making you stupid. It just makes you lopsided. It just makes you a little bit of dysfunctional when it comes to decision making. You can still think, but the weight behind the decisions you are taking, that becomes a little bit distorted. This paper, as much as it was academic, it also mentions something very human. When you're in a certain mood, you pay a bit more attention to the things and the emotions which match that mood. And this was termed as a mood congruity effect. So it's like when you're anxious, your eyes tend to find threats in the environment around you. When you're sad, your mind tries to find losses around you. And when you're bitter, your memory tends to find betrayals in your past. It's like your brain it's like your brain becomes a sort of a search engine, because there is also a concept of the emotional state dependent memory, meaning being what you learn or absorb in a particular emotional state can be easier to recall when you return to that emotional state. Like in a particular emotional state, when you were hurting, you felt that you were not enough. Your brain will tend to retrieve that belief, and that is terrifying because it feels like an absolute truth. And emotions also tend to affect your problem solving capability. It affects your judgment, it affects your problem solving style and attitude towards a crisis which may come in your life. It's more like I feel bad. In turn, my brain will also be affected, and it will definitely affect the way my brain will try to figure out a solution to a problem or a crisis. And when you realize that, you will stop making moral judgments, and you may start feeling that my system currently is not functioning well, and of course, and the clarity feels a lot far away. But here's something which kind of felt a little personal. It argues that emotions are not just thoughts. Emotions deal with activating a very strong part of your nervous system. And the fun part is, the and your body actually participates in that. We might find ourselves talking things like, my heart is pounding, my throat went dry. It was gut wrenching to feel that. It took my breath away. These are not just poetic metaphors. They are reports. They are something which we feel in our body. So this paper tries to argue and discuss, where do emotions actually come from? Is it the heart, or is it the body, or is it the brain which is making your body function? So there were different studies which attempted to understand this thing, and some were of the opinion that the emotions arise from the body, the physical aspect, and then they manifest themselves into your emotions and conscious. There were approaches that your brain is the center point of your emotions, and then there were approaches that your emotions aren't necessarily coming from one place, it is coming from a circuit of your brain and your emotional capacity of your body. And the most modern approaches, it's neither coming from your brain, it's neither coming from your heart. It's more of a dynamic process which you feel as a response to the things which are happening in your environment and your life. That is, emotion is not an endpoint, it is a process which is created by interaction. It's like your memory, your interpretation of it, your bodily feedback, the processing of your brain. They are all building up on each other. And that's the point when the source of the emotion kind of becomes irrelevant. Instead, a question which makes more sense is, what is this loop? Like, what is this loop my body and my brain is stuck at right now? This is the cleanest idea of a relation between emotion and thought, which could be explained to a general audiences. It's like the brain is a pattern matching machine. It's trying to identify patterns in your life, the way you respond to it, the way you deal with it. It's constantly comparing what's happening at this moment, both inside and outside, and what has it learned from the before or the previous experiences, and how is it helping me. And whenever there is a mismatch, your body system is going to react. It's like the concept of, it's like novelty can grab attention, and mismatch in the thoughts and the emotions can trigger a sense of arousal, of chaos. And it's when your system starts believing that it cannot go back to its previous stable state, that's when anxiety creeps in. Sometimes you're not just overthinking, sometimes it's just your brain which is trying to scan for these abnormalities in your life, because it just doesn't trust the factor of stability. It's like your baseline reference patterns are already derived from being unstable. They're being derived from factors like anxiety, stress, emotional exhaustion, that even normal inputs to this system can feel like a mismatch. And this is not because you're too dramatic. It is because your reference pattern is just destabilized. That is, your knowledge base is just destabilized. And the paper also discusses about the fact that that is both interesting and delicate. It argues that the heart is at the center of your emotional system because it produces strong rhythmic patterns you follow in your daily life. It sends out upward feedback to your brain to tell it to function in a certain way or not function in a certain way, and these patterns can cause shifts in your emotional states. The point here is that your heart isn't something magical. The point here is your heart isn't just reacting to certain things, it is also informing. So when you find your heart in a place of chaos, it is sending that chaos upward to the brain. And that in turn can make your thinking cloudy, not because your IQ has dropped or something. It's just because your input signal is so noisy in the first place. To sum it up, this is the idea this paper essentially boils down to, which this video essentially boils down to. It says something like, effectively managed emotions can work in synchrony to your mind, and unmanaged emotions can be the source of the chaos in your life. And honestly, that's the thing which I wish someone had informed me earlier. You can't always fix your mind by yelling at it. Sometimes you just need some emotional hygiene, some stability, some self-management, some emotional regulation. So your mind finds that space to breathe again. It's because when your emotional and your mental systems are in sync, that's when the motivation returns, creativity returns, a sense of clarity returns, and hopefully the performance improves. Not because you're suddenly becoming a lot better, it's because your internal systems have stopped fighting each other. That is, your heart is not fighting with your brain, they're supporting each other. So, what do you do? Or what do I do with all this information? That the thing I understood are emotions are not some mathematical equations to be solved. Emotions are not your inherent enemies. They are just fast signals, even faster than the synapses running in your brain. Your physical body, that is not just a passenger serving as a base. Your physical body, that is not just a part of it. It is something which participates in this communication. And if at a particular point I find myself in a chaotic state of mind, I would probably just ask myself, what am I thinking? What is my body feeling right now? What is my heart doing right now? And what is the overall state I am finding myself in right now? I would definitely try to articulate it, or maybe over a journal, or maybe over a video like this. It's like when I can't create, when I can't think, when I can't function, maybe I should not just put pressure on myself. Maybe I just need to give myself and my brain a bit space to gain some stability, to gain some coherence in my emotions. And if you're watching this and if you relate anything I said over this video, if your heart is too loud, if your mind is too tired, I just want to say it might not be just laziness, it might not be just weakness, it might be just a factor of dysregulation. You're not failing in life, you're just trying to understand this storm which is whirling inside you. And that is all I learned and understood from this paper I read. I will be sharing the link reference to that paper, so you can go ahead and read it yourself. It was a pretty interesting read, and you should definitely give it a try to understand. You can definitely give it a try if you want to understand a bit better about the connection which your emotions and your thought, your intellect share with each other. Till I see you again in the next one. Cheers.